Hello, I am Megan and welcome to Battle Royale with Cheese, the website you can get all of your TV and film news reviews and trailers. And we are at the halfway mark now with AlienEarth. I apologise that it's taken me a while to get round to this. I put up a community post a couple of days ago saying that it was going to be out again a few days ago. I completely forgot that I was actually going to be away, so I do apologise for that. And even from tomorrow, I'm actually going to be away for a few days, which I'll talk about more at the end of the video, because some things are going to change in terms of when the next reviews are coming up. Also, I don't know why, I don't know what's going on with my light, but yeah, I apologise that my face is probably quite dark. I do apologise for that in terms of the lighting. Again, things I might mention are spoilerish, so we are just going to go through anything that I want to talk about with the episode. So yeah, there might be spoilers in this video. But overall, I thought this episode was actually quite tense. So I'm going to go through again groups of characters and kind of my thoughts. They are all a bit jumbled once again. This is probably how these videos are going to go. But overall, I thought this one was really tense. There's a lot of interesting ideas being brought up. The first one being that the synthetics are starting to think for themselves. So if you remember in the previous episodes, I said that it was like they were being objectified. They were told to just obey orders. They were just given orders and that was it. And in this episode, we started hinting at it in the last episode actually, with Curly learning French on her own. And this explores that a bit more. So Slightly and Morrow are still communicating with each other. Morrow tells Slightly to steal an alien egg for him to take back to him, and actually does go to his family and threaten his family. This is when Slightly's mother finds out that he's still alive. And that's kind of where we leave off with him. I think that's going to be his story arc for the rest of this series now, because he didn't feature too much in this episode. There was an attempt where he tried to get the egg and failed when he realised he thought it was going to be too difficult, which is when Morrow starts to threaten him. But that's kind of where we're at with him. The interesting one to point out though was Nibs. So there was a scene involving Sylvia and Arthur, who are the two main scientists in charge of the synth program, and they have a conversation about sort of doubting whether what Prodigy is doing is right, about whether Prodigy carried out the right protocols for the procedure, because he said, we've just put kids into adult robot bodies and just left them to their own devices, expecting them to just transition seamlessly into this without actually thinking about the consequences of this. And I think that's a really interesting discussion to have, because it does also start to open up that idea of these simps are going to start exploring things on their own. So Nibs announcing that she's pregnant was an interesting one, but I saw it as, one, a trauma response, but also two, again, it's already been explored that they are kids just being put into these adult robot bodies. They don't know, they don't really know what's going on from that point. They've just kind of been put into the deep end and that's it. So, they're all a bit confused about where they lie now, mentally, mature-wise, and, physically as well. There's a point where I think it's Arthur or Sylvia says, "Oh, you can't be pregnant, you're just a machine." To which Nibs actually is quite upset by that and says, "I'm not a machine, I'm human. I'm still, I'm still got a human consciousness. Like, that hasn't changed." So I think that argument is really interesting, and it was something we've talked about with previous episodes as well, where even Morrow at one point, I think it was in the last episode, said, "At what point is a human not a human?" And it ties back into that whole idea and concept. But Nib's storyline so far ends with she actually attacks Sylvia, because Sylvia tries to ask her, "Oh, what happened on the ship when you went there?" She was the one that was quite scared quite a lot, and she doesn't want to talk about it, but Sylvia keeps pressing her to answer, and Nibs ends up actually attacking her to make her stop. I think Sylvia, I don't know where it's going to go, but Sylvia did say, "Oh, it's like a level 3 action." So she's probably going to be locked up and secured in her room for a while. So we'll see how that develops. There's another synth who's been working with Kirsch, who's the scientist one, and at one point he actually asks Kirsch whether he can have his own name, to which he names himself Isaac. And this again comes back to they're starting to move away from Prodigy's control and starting to think for themselves and make their own decisions about what they want. There's another conversation later on where Hermit is basically guilt-tripped into working with Prodigy because he wants to leave and take Wendy with him. But they basically said, well, no, these simps are our property. Like, we created them, they are now our property. And if you're going to take that away, well, the lung we've given you, you've got to start paying for that. Or you can stay here and get your lung for free, but you'll work it off. So he's essentially guilt-tripped into staying, but there's an interesting conversation later on where Slightly starts to question, oh, how come your brother's here but no one else's family is allowed to be here? Like, where's the fairness in that? Which, to be fair, like, Hermit agrees with. He's like, yeah, actually, that is a good point. I don't understand why your families aren't allowed to visit. To which they all agree, actually, we're going to demand to see our families and our siblings and stuff. I don't know how that's going to go in the next episode, because that's kind of where that leaves off. But again, it's all hinting towards that, you know, they're thinking for themselves. They're realising, okay, maybe this wasn't as perfect as we originally thought it was. We're starting to see the problems with this contract, as it were, with the procedure. And even Boy, who's the Prodigy's creator, I apologise, I kept forgetting his name when I was watching the show, to be honest, so I do apologise that I haven't mentioned his actual name. But Boy is a bit of a weird one in this episode because he seems to have a bit of personality change. From the get-go, you know, he's not very happy that Hermit's there, which in his perspective is understandable. The synth program was supposed to be top secret and now someone knows. And he's not very happy about that. But he seems very pushy in this one and quite desperate to get things moving and get going. Which I think is also the pressure of Wayland wanting their creatures back and him not giving them back and experimenting on them instead. But the personality change did just seem to be a bit sudden from the last episode to now. Because the gap in the timeline isn't that long. It's probably only like a few minutes later from the end of the last episode and the start of this one. So yeah, that did seem a bit like, okay, you've just got a bit more desperate, a bit more forceful, and a bit more pressurising. That's a bit different from the last episode. But in terms of context, it does make sense. But I think they should have given it a bit more time between the two episodes. For him to have that personality change. But the last thing I'm going to talk about is Wendy. So we discover that in the last episode, Wendy has a connection with the Xenomorph. And actually, in the beginning of this episode, we find out that she can communicate with them. She can understand what they're saying and she can talk to them. And that's obviously going to be quite helpful. You know, Hermit and Arthur, who's one of the other scientists, says, you know, we should let her like rest, charge down, and refresh. Boy and even Wendy say, no, actually, if she knows this alien language, it could be valuable to us. Which Wendy agrees with. Which does make sense for her character. At the moment, it seems like she clearly has a different motive, but she is wanting to do the same things that Prodigy is wanting her to do. But she has a different reason for doing these things. So her going to the crash site, they wanted her to do anyway, but she had a different reason for doing that. Her brother was there. With this one, again, Prodigy want her to do this, and she wants to do this, but again, it's for a different reason. She is interested in her own intelligence and what she's capable of. Whereas I have a feeling that they want her to control the Xenomorphs for maybe an attack on Wayland, for maybe a monopoly purpose. That's my guess anyway. But yeah, there's different motives going on, but they're all doing the same thing, basically. But the episode ends with, in the end of the last episode, Hermit, when he was taken in by Prodigy, he got a new lung, which I already said, but his old lung was actually used for a incubator for the Xenomorph. and at the end of this episode, Wendy goes to communicate with the xenomorph lung, is what I'm going to call it, and it hatches. So the xenomorph bursts out the lung, and she starts talking to the xenomorph baby. So I think what's going to happen is they're going to realise that she can maybe... because she starts treating it as if it's like a pet or even a friend. And the xenomorph, once it understands her and realises that she's speaking its language, isn't hostile towards her. So I think what's going to happen is Prodigy are going to realise, oh, we have an advantage here, and they're going to use her to control the xenomorph. I think in terms of Slightly and his story arc, I think instead of getting an egg, which he said he couldn't do, I think what they're going to do instead is Slightly is going to take that xenomorph baby and take it back tomorrow. Maybe get Wendy involved as well, because Wendy will surely find out. So I think that's where that's going. But yeah, this was a really tense episode. There was a lot of things that happened, but I think in terms of the synths, I think what's going on with them is really, really interesting. I think there's going to be a bit of an uprising, because Prodigy have to come down and have their downfall at some point. Because I've said this in the last few videos, but Prodigy have to go. Because Wayland, as far as we know, kind of has to be one of the last companies standing, one of the last corporations standing. So Prodigy have to go, and I still think Boy is going to be used as like a facehugger host. I still think that's going to happen. It nearly happened in the last episode, but I think that is going to happen in this one. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, those are my theories, those are my thoughts at the moment. I think it was a really tense episode. I think what it's hinting at with the simps is really interesting. I think Prodigy are probably going to be in a bit of trouble soon. And yeah, I think with Wendy and the xenomorph, that's really interesting as well. But yeah, we're now at the halfway mark of AlienEarth. I apologise that it took me a few days to get to this, but the next episode is up on the 3rd of September. Now, I am not here because the 3rd is my birthday. I'm actually away for my birthday. I'm back on the 5th, so the next episode of AlienEarth, my next video on it, will probably be on the 6th or 7th, because I'm not sure what time I'm getting back on the 5th. However, you are getting a review video on the 3rd or 4th, so it's going to be a film review. I'm seeing a film tomorrow and then going off out. So yeah, so the 3rd or 4th will be a film review, then the 6th or 7th will be AlienEarth episode 5 review. So yeah, I'll put a community post up about this as well once this video goes up. But yeah, this was my thoughts and theories on AlienEarth episode 4. I was Megan, this is Battle Royale with Cheese. See you soon.